Hi, welcome to the Cows Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Burney. A catalyst is defined as a person or thing that precipitates an event. A catalyst is something that it participates in a reaction, but does not get consumed in the reaction. There's a heart behind this podcast for, people with aspirations. There's a heart behind this podcast for motivated people that want to make a difference, that have a bias for action, that really, truly want to be a catalyst in the environment around them, both professionally and personally, in their homes, in their workplace, and beyond. So welcome to this podcast. I really hope you're enjoying the series that we're in. Welcome to this episode, and let's dive right in. As we jump into this second episode, I really just want to focus on like current state for you, right? And we've kind of built up to where you're at with Crisis Ally. I've got your website pulled up. I think there's some cool things that you've got on your new website, but I just want to kind of turn it over to you to start and tell us about Crisis Ally, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, and so glad to be back, Hunter. Thank you for having me again. So Crisis Ally originally was born, at least in my head, a couple of years ago, and really started around March 2019 as Alexandra Hoffman Consulting. People have no idea how hard it is to find a company's name. So eventually it became Crisis Ally last June. I was pretty proud of this name, and we, again, like you just mentioned, we have our new website up now, super easy, crisisally.com, in English and in French. And what we do is really we focus on business resilience. That was my first intention when I launched my business in March 2019. Lots of my peers said I was crazy, that business resilience was not the thing. And based on my professional experience, personal experience, I was very adamant about the fact that it was a thing. And COVID happened, and now it's become a thing for pretty much everyone around the planet. So I think it's a good thing, because people are now aware that silos have to be broken. We talked about security / HR stuff. Now we're talking about change management. That's one of my number one opportunity as well, I would say, because when we face a crisis, even as a company, as a big company, we never ever include change management or conflict management. I've never seen a plan including those processes, change management processes and principles, right? And it's a huge mistake. It's simply a huge mistake. Now, why don't we include change management and conflict management? For very good reasons. We haven't been trained on that as security experts, as crisis management experts, as business continuity managers and stuff, right? But now it's time to just, innovate, I would say, or at least upskill our game and get more knowledgeable about change management and conflict management. And I think the really cool thing is that the minute we involve change management, conflict management with crisis management, we talk about people, because change management is all about the people, right? So this is what we try to do at Crisis Ally, is really help the crisis leaders and crisis teams thrive through crisis by focusing on these topics and making sure that the point is not about listing the risks. In the first episode, I listed a couple of experience I've had with crisis. We never had a specific plan or contingency plans at the time. It was super trendy to have those, right? You have these detailed contingency plans for every single risk you've highlighted. It's pointless. And I was the first one writing them at the time, and spending days and weeks working on those. Yeah, it's you plan for something, and obviously something completely different happens. And we all saw it with the pandemic. All of us saw it with the pandemic. One of the first thing I remember is at the beginning of the pandemic, I was looking for some data, and one of one report I found, I think it was from McKinsey, early 2019. Okay, early 2019. I think it was June 2019 from McKinsey. Was listing all the risks and tabletop exercises companies had been trained, and a health crisis, not even a pandemic, a health crisis, I think was listed maybe number 10 on the list.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not even talking about an actual health crisis. They were just talking about a scam, just a threat of a health crisis. That was June 2019, right? What happened 6 months later?
Yeah.
So it's and we're all guilty of this. Again, I've written contingency plans and crisis management plans, even business continuity plans for all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's like with kids, you plan for something, it's always different.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of analogies there, right? When you talk about planning, and are you planning for the right things? Is it too detailed? Is it simple? I think your word was, they're pointless, to an extent. So what would you say, how would you describe, like, when you engage with a business leader or team, like, are you having to come in and totally reframe, like, hey, these plans look great, but let's throw those in the garbage and start from ground zero? Is it that kind of thing typically? Or is it, hey, Alexandra?
I would never do this out of respect first for what they did, number one.
I understand. I'm probably a little too liberal with the way I worded that. Yeah. No, I appreciate
but
you.
No, but I'm not. So let me take a step back. I'm just saying that if we just write a plan for the sake of checking a box, this is worth nothing. The problem is many companies do this for good reasons, because audits requires it, insurance companies requires it. But instead of doing this because we don't get the insurance policy if we don't do it, or we don't get the right audits for clients or partners, whatever it is, we have to think of the intention we put behind this planning. And this is what I'm talking about here. Writing a plan for the sake of writing a plan and checking boxes is pointless. If we write plans and then put the right intention, which is because we want to see the company thrive. So take a company like, for instance, HP. Okay, take HP. It's HP has been my home for so many years, right? It's such an old company. We don't want a company like this to die, right? Right. So what intention do we put behind this crisis management planning and business continuity planning and resilience planning? Checking boxes? Of course not. Right. We just want this company to go on for years and years to come, right? And this is basically what I try to remind people is, what intention do we put behind this planning, right? So if we have I would say the right intention, some companies could be that the intention is that, okay, we want to make sure that we support the environment the right way. We want to make sure that we keep on serving the people the right way. Take, for instance, NGOs, right? They serve lots of people around the globe. We don't want them to die for the right. So why are we planning crisis management plans and business continuity plans? Because we want them to keep on serving and helping people around the world, right? So what is the intention we put behind that? And of course, it also, I think it's also extremely important to focus on the people who will put those plans into practice. And the reality is that there are some experts like us around the world, many of them, most of them are extremely good experts, but we're not self-reliant. We have to rely on so many more stakeholders, right? And those stakeholders, what they deal with crisis, once, twice, 3 times a year at best, right? As business leaders, I'm saying, they're not used to it. They're not used to it. So training those people to handle this from a human standpoint, to make sure that those crisis management meetings go well, right? That we respect each other, that everyone has a voice around the table. that we know when and how to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things also that should come into the planning process. You know what I'm saying? Makes
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, no. I love it. And it makes me think of a recent conversation and just in general, the philosophy around organizational change and you can, in some rare cases, you can be very controlling and just kind of force things, right? Maybe that's how you respond if there's a fire in the building, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like,
Yeah.
hey, I've got to be
Out.
very clear.
Yeah.
There's no question about what needs to happen here.
Yeah.
But when you think about the context of how you're describing things and the potential for things, that businesses may face, it comes down to me. It comes down. I want to kind of get your thoughts on this. To me, it comes down to understanding what the individual, what their perception is, what their understanding is. Is fear a concern here, and how do we handle that? Do they trust? Like, have we built trust? Like, do we have that relationship with the team so that they don't see this as just some kind of fruitless thing that we're communicating? What are your thoughts on that?
These are all very, very valid points, I would say. Number one, not everything is a fire. Firefighting is a very specific job. And of course, there are some instances like this in companies, but not too often, which is fortunate. And in many instances, we have the time to think before we make decisions. We should take the time to think. We should take the time to discuss. And of course, that trust you're talking about is absolutely essential. But then we go back to the planning here. We don't build a trust on day one of a crisis management meeting, right? We build the trust way before that. At least we're supposed to. If we haven't built the trust before, what are we going to do? Damage control. That's all it is. And if there is really, really some hard topics and issues coming up and conflicts coming up, I'm not saying people fighting with each other, right? But just regular human conflicts, then it becomes much harder to deal with and to handle, right? So the trust factor, one of my peer in the industry, which I'll be giving a conference with on Monday, actually, David Horobin, speaks about trust beautifully. It's super, super important. But again, you build this before. It's like, again, I always come back to the personal life examples as well. You don't build trust with your partner when things happen. You've built it along the way from the day one. And if you don't have that trust, do you build a life with that person? No, you don't. Or at least I hope you don't, right?
Right.
Sometimes we do by mistake, right? But it's a different story. But if we have built that trust from day one, then when things get more difficult, it's much easier to handle. Right. Much easier, right? So, and of course, handling emotions. Like you talked about fear, but a lot of emotions we can see about, especially during crisis, is anger. Think about those people during the COVID crisis at every level of the society who got so angry because of the lockdowns and because of not being with the teams and spending time at home with kids all over the place, which was very hard to handle the personal and professional life. So being able also to understand and handle all those emotions is absolutely essential. But again, that type of training you do and you get before the crisis happens. And of course, the more you go through crises are actually training themselves. But it's also helpful if you get a bit of training in between, so the next crisis you mess up a little bit less, right?
Right.
It's of course we'll make mistakes. The point is not to be perfect, and the point is not to deal with a crisis perfectly, but the point is to do some serious damage control from a human standpoint,
right,
and to make sure that we learn as much as we can and we grow from that disruptive event, whatever it is.
Right. Kind of strengthen the foundation of.
Yeah. Because I believe crises are good. Crises are foundational, very, very, very much so. But they're foundational if we handle them the right way, right?
Yeah. Wow. So I want to pivot a bit to one of the things that I like, and I really like the new website, by the way. But at the top, you have we help crisis leaders and crisis teams thrive through crisis. You've already almost said that word for word, I think. Right below that, it says without identifying every single risk an organization may face. Can you tell us a little bit about that statement?
Well, of course. I think it goes back to what we discussed a little bit before around the planning.
Right.
Well, our brain, I always go back to the kids, because when I became a mom 4.5 years ago, it dawned on me how managing people and managing kids is pretty much the same. Managing crisis in the world and managing kids' crisis is pretty much the same as well. People might not agree with this, but I seriously agree, and I'm learning every day from my kids, from my work, despite the fact that I've been a professional for 20 years now. So to go back to your question is that the human brain feels secured when we have a framework. This is why I was talking about kids 2 seconds ago, because kids to grow up securely and safely need this framework that we give them, right? I think every parent knows that. It's exactly the same for adults. As we grow up, we keep on growing up and we keep on living our adult life. We have the same needs, basically. We need that. I was talking about culture during the first episode. Many people thrive in a company's culture, because it gives a framework of reference to live by, to say, okay, I belong to that organization. It's the same. So we do those, I believe, risk analysis with the same intention at the end, basically at the beginning. We want to put things in boxes because it feels safer to do that. It feels safer, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, and we feel that we are more in control. And I think one of the biggest paradox, I would say, in our industry is that we want to help mitigate those risks, but we want to control everything at the same time. And we want to control it so much by identifying risks, evaluating and understanding those risks, but also giving it data, statistics, all the data analytics are just huge now, that we go too far. We have to let go of it. Just accept that life will throw things at us. And if we get the right preparation, the right planning, without focusing on those 5, 10, 15, 20 risks, whatever, depending on companies, executive committees will have a certain number of risks clearly identified. I believe it gives much more room to navigate through the crisis much more comfortably. So this is what I mean by this sentence, right? Is that instead of just spending days and weeks and huge amount of money with consultants saying, oh, this risk is really the one you should pay attention to, give it some space. Just accept that things are going to happen, and then get prepared for that. Get trained and plan for the unexpected, for the unexpected, but with an open mind. Because if we think that whatever phishing attack is going to happen at any cost, it's not going to happen like this. Otherwise, it would be way too easy. And I think from a security standpoint, from a professional standpoint, it's a lie to say that we have a crystal ball. Sorry. Even if we have statistics, even if we have data, there's a huge, very, very important book. Just give me 2 seconds because I'm going to take it right now.
Okay.
It's actually in my reading list on my website.
Okay.
Every single security professional need to read this book. Every single professional. Because it talks about all of the brain biases, basically, that we have as risk managers, as security managers, crisis managers, which are critical because we think we have the data, we think we have the knowledge, the past experience, but no, the brain does his things, and we have no control over it. So if we don't also raise that level of awareness about the way we think, about the way the brain functions, we can identify all the risks we want. It's not going to fly. I'm very clear with that.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And so for those that maybe aren't listening or aren't watching the video portion of this, was that the ostrich principle?
The ostrich paradox, yes.
Ostrich paradox, okay.
Yeah. The ostrich paradox by Robert Mayer and Howard Kunzreuter. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name. It's the Wharton School Press, basically. It's super easy to find on the internet.
Thank you for being a part of this journey. Definitely subscribe and like. Check out Be a Catalyst on Instagram and on Twitter. Also, don't forget to check out the YouTube channel where you'll find videos in addition to the Catalyst podcast recordings that give a little bit more context around my heart for training, my heart for seeing early to middle managers and first-time leaders really thrive and be a catalyst in the organization that they're in the project that they are after, everything that goes along with that. So thank you for being a part of this. Tune in for the next episode, and remember, be you, be confident, be a catalyst.